Chag Sameach, everyone. This morning, I want to teach a little bit, if by no other means than exposing you to a text, a thinker, two texts and two thinkers. Preach a little bit in terms of what comes from it, at least for me, and then I will also reveal some theological confusion. I hope to spread it. So first of all, Kol Dodi Dofek. Listen, my beloved knocks. I'm not sure if you know of those words or have ever heard of that title, but it's the title of a seminal essay that was written by Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. Soloveitchik was one of the great Talmudic scholars and philosophers of the 20th century. From Boston, the son of a brilliant dynasty of Orthodox rabbis. Soloveitchik was, at least by my generation of Orthodox rabbis, was revered. He ordained over 1,000 rabbis. Kol Dodi Dofek. Listen, my beloved knocks. He delivered the address on the 8th anniversary of Israel's Independence Day. The work has a profound theological and philosophical reflection on his time. 8 years after the establishment of the State of Israel, and probably about 18 years since the beginning of the final solution. And he explores themes of suffering, redemption, and the Jewish people's covenantal relationship with God. And he defines two very key concepts. One he refers to as Brit Goral, or the covenant of fate. The covenant of fate represents the shared suffering and persecution experienced by the Jewish people, by our people throughout history. And it makes us passive recipients of the divine will. God, in his covenant with our people, knew or was a force in our suffering, the suffering that we experienced going back to the time of Egyptian bondage. And the second Brit, the second covenant, he calls Brit Yehud. It's the covenant of destiny. In contrast, this covenant signifies a proactive role where Jews actively shape their future, where Jews take responsibility and agency to fulfill God's will. The essay argues that the Holocaust exemplified the covenant of fate, whereas the creation of the State of Israel embodied the covenant of destiny, urging Jews to move from passive suffering to taking control and actively participate in the creation of their destiny and the birth of the state. Now, there is a 10th century Italian hymn which exists in our Siddur, and frankly, we've never done it, and I don't remember any synagogue or place where the hymn is done. It's written by a poet named Shlomo Habavli. It's recited in some places on the first 2 days of Pesach. And I want you to turn to it. It's on page 221. It's entitled Barach Dodi, 221. It goes like this. Hasten. Hurry, O friend divine, the time of our renewal, return to us in mercy. The oppressors of our people have all but consumed us. Destroy, uproot them from our midst. Restore your city and make us again a people of song. May the hour of our Redeemer draw nigh. Hasten, O friend. The time of redemption promised by your seers, lift from us the darkening shadows, raise up, exalt the people that has long known insult. Bestow upon them wisdom to teach, to cleanse many nations. Reveal your saving might. Proclaim the hour of redemption. Hasten, O friend, with the row's speed. A row, by the way, is a gazelle. To put an end to my imprisonment, I am despoiled in captivity. For my crown of glory I yearn, and seek to return to the glorious mountain. I am left without a leader, without prophet to restore me. Plead my cause, remove my guilt and pain. Let my enemies see and be confounded. Let me announce to them who reproach me that my friend has come, my Redeemer, my beloved, my Father's God. For the merit of the ancestors, deliver their children and children's children. Praise you, Adonai, Redeemer of Israel. Hasten, O friend divine, to the city of your presence. And I'll go to the next paragraph. Hasten, O friend, to your shrine of peace. And the last, hasten, O friend, to your ancient habitation. So the poet, as you see, was from the 10th century in Italy during a time of great distress for so many Jewish communities. He speaks not of communities and people becoming active to save themselves, but he looks for his friend with a capital F. He looks for God. I spoke in the beginning before this about Soloveitchik's 2 covenants from his work, Kol Dodi Dofek, and I wonder if in some way he was working off of Baruch Dodi. So he wrote it at the anniversary of the modern state of Israel. The covenant of faith, what happens to us being the will of God, as so many believe. The covenant of destiny, what happens to us is a function of human agency. We can understand that would be a very significant conversation 8 years after the founding of the State of Israel, and some 14 years after the beginning of the final solution. For Bavli, the author of Baruch Dodi, pleading with God to bring a return of his people to their land and their redemption in the 10th century, his primary, if not exclusive, attachment is to Brit Koral, the covenant of destiny. And I thought about this in relation to Pesach and our reading of the Haggadah. And think about it. I'll explain why. You know the name which is not mentioned in the Haggadah? Moses, Moshe. And obviously that's very purposeful. Let me tell you why I think so. Because the authors and the redactors of the Haggadah text want us to view the redemption as only coming from one place. What is that? Where is that? Who is that? It's God. And I can tell you why I think it's purposeful and important. It's related also to a talk that I gave here on Rosh Hashanah about the concept of Malchuyot, of the kingship of God, and how, in fact, it developed in Bavel, in Babylonia, as a response to the worship of Nebuchadnezzar, not only as the king, but also as the manifestation of God on earth. And we wouldn't accept that. So I believe the Haggadah's designers decided to do this because of Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh was a tyrant, a human being who took ultimate authority, and he assumed the right to control any human being he decided to control. He had the power to enslave others. Early on in the Bible, the Torah itself serves a number of very important purposes. And if we were to think about the elevator speech for the Torah, perhaps the most important purpose of the Torah was to extract our people from a pagan world. We were to be removed from polytheism and remove ourselves from the worship of not just idols, but the human powers that they represented. Some of us may remember, I did, that my wife Toby gave an introduction to Shir HaShirim a couple years ago. And in it she spoke about the Haggadah. And she talked about the anthropologists of religion having taught us that each one of the plagues represented a different pagan god. The frogs, for example, represented the god of the gods responsible for giving birth. And perhaps there's a reason that we say frogs first, the Fardea first, because the first thing that set us on the road to redemption were the midwives. Darkness was a response, the plague of darkness was a response to the sun god, one of the most important gods worshipped in ancient Egypt. So we're not redeemed because of the work and courage of Moses, according to Haggadah. We're redeemed because of God. Who knows one? Echad miyodea. One is the God of our people. One is the God of the universe. And so as we begin the telling, the Haggadah, and ask the question, Ma nishtana, what has changed? Ma nishtana, what has changed? The answer is never given directly, but rather we're brought to another idea. Avadim hayinu, we were slaves. And God brought us out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. If God had not brought up our ancestors from Egypt, then we, our children and our children's children, would have remained enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Therefore, we're obligated to tell the story of the Exodus. And a bit later in the Haggadah, we will bless God who keeps his promise to Israel. He ended their bondage in order to fulfill a promise he made to Abraham, an early covenant. Foreseeing the future, he understood that our people would be enslaved in Egypt. He let us know that was going to happen, and he told us. And the enslavement would last 400 years, but afterwards, they would leave. They would be numerous and strong. And so we hear the words in the Seder, V'hi Sha'amda. Not only has one enemy risen up against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise up to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us from their hand. And today, in the last couple of years, V'hi Sha'amda, with a popular new melody, once again is heard on the streets of Israel. The Holy One will save us. And all of these ideas are reflective of Brit Goral, the covenant of destination, not of destination, the covenant of that God gives us, the covenant of fate. And the words are familiar and quaint. They evoke a sense of hope. And they evoke a sense of hope, of hope for us. We'll be saved, but our salvation will come from there. The Jewish philosophers in the beginning in the mid-50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they challenged us with a different notion. As in my experience, our conservative rabbis also challenged us with a different notion. Most notably by Harold Kushner's When Bad Things Happen to Good People. In the sense that it's not all in the hands of God. There's evil in the world. There are random events in the world. And that's the world we have to bring God into. In this thinking, there's a major emphasis on Brit Yehud, the covenant of destiny. You know who's responsible then for our lives and for our condition? We are. The people are. There may be a partnership between ourselves and our faith, but if we don't stand up and send our boys to war, we won't exist. If we're not willing to pursue peace, peace will not happen. So it creates a great deal of challenge for me as an observer of our tradition, a student of our tradition, and a lover of our people and a lover of Zion. We return to our land because we chose to return to our land. And the victories of Israel have been extraordinary, and the nation was created, and it's all been amazing, and we often speak about it, reflect upon it, particularly in the most traditional communities, as being the work of God. But there was a Herzl, and there was a Ben Gurion, and there was a Begin, and there were tens of thousands of very brave men and women. And the turning point took place in all of this after 1967. Because 1967 was described as God's miracle. But let me tell you something about God's miracle. It would not have happened without the technology that developed Israel's Air Force, and those pilots, and those people who conceived of the strategy that destroyed our neighbors' air forces, and Israel won. And our capacity to enlarge our borders and occupy the West Bank was a source of such great pride, as it should have been. But the concept of Brit Goral may have come to create many problems that still exist 70 years later, because when we held on to the notion of a God-given land, when we believed this represented a different myth, the myth was this was the beginning of messianic redemption, we changed the balance, and we changed the entire nature of our existence. Rabin's murder was justified because they saw him as an agent working against the people of God, Yitzhak Rabin. And this whole concept of messianism, if you know Jewish history, has brought us so much trouble. I can't name one time, I cannot name one case where Mishichut, messianism, has been helpful for the Jewish people. Because what it has done is take responsibility out of the hands of people. There can be a mature and objective and inspirational and motivational idea as to our ability to protect our autonomy and create the state of our dreams. And so much of that comes from the values of Torah and the values of our prophets. But it doesn't come from giving up our agency. And when we turn it over to the concept of God, which came from a period such as this period from 10th century Italian Jewry and medieval Jewish philosophy based on our life and oppression, where we were hopeless and dependent, we developed a perspective of being a weak people. And we gave our future over to the Kadosh Baruch Hu without realizing the agency that we always have had. And so we find ourselves in a place exactly where we are today. And think about it, where we are today, and the perceptions of that. Because for some people, the whole focus of Jewish existence has to do with the anti-Semitism that we face, that they're all against us, and that we are powerless. Israel is not powerless. Israel is powerful, and Israel has been powerful for quite a long time. And the Jew in the United States, we are strong, and we are influential, and we have power. Does that mean we are not attacked? No, not at all. Does that mean we're weak? We are not weak. And so the powerful nation of Israel is not only not defeating Hamas, but in fact, with all the bombings and all the deaths and all the suffering, today there are more Hamas fighters than there were October 6th, 2023? What have we achieved with our power? And what gave the government the authority to be able to continue? It is and was and is religious Zionism. Let us be wise. Let our connections to our people reflect our understanding of what we are able to achieve. And what we pursue must be in the light of that which reflects the divine. We can't be fundamentalists. We can't be fundamentalists and expect to evolve and to move forward. I'm not speaking about inherited mythologies. I'm speaking about the need to inherit the values of our tradition, the rituals of our tradition, the flavor of our tradition, the spirit of our tradition. So let me give you one more text. And again, we'll draw from a text we read on Pesach. You know the Megillah we read on Pesach? Shelley, what is it? What's the Megillah we read on Pesach? I know you know it because you recite it so beautifully. Shir HaShirim. I know you're not, but you did it last year, and the year before, in the last 20 years. Shir HaShirim, the Song of Song. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful love song. It's one of two Megillot that doesn't mention God's name. And the other is Megillah Esther. But there's a difference between the two. Because in Megillah Esther, there is an allusion to God. There's a sense that if she doesn't do what she needs to do according to Mordechai, redemption will come from another source. That doesn't take place in Megillah Esther, in Shir HaShirim. There are two reasons that are given that we read Shir HaShirim on Pesach. One is that it embodies the entire Torah, the story of the exile in Egypt and slavery, the redemption of Israel from slavery, as well as other oppression, so that by reading Shir HaShirim, we enhance the mitzvah of recounting the story of the Exodus. And the rabbis were onto something. Because Shir HaShirim is a metaphor for the love between God and the people Israel. And it makes no mention of God. It's because the author of Shir HaShirim is described not as God, but as Melech Shlomo, King Solomon. And so here's my jump. And this is what I need to justify Soloveitchik's second covenant. Solomon, Shlomo, represents the Creator. Shlomo is the embodiment of shalom, of peace. And so now we learn where our responsibility lies. We understand it's in our hands to defend, but to realize our role in the world that we find ourselves in, and our capacity and our agency to create peace. Sometimes it's hard. And sometimes it takes a battle to come to peace. We need God as the model of the Midot, which we heard 4 times in front of the Aron Kodesh. Qualities, values that we bring to life. A God who is merciful and gracious. A God who gives us hope. A God who is the receptacle of our gratitude for the gifts we have. A God who inspires us and our mission to be an Or LaGoyim, a light to the nations, as well as a God whose very presence reminds us of our limitations as human beings, understanding that no human being can exercise unlimited authority, understanding that we know God through freedom, a central notion of this holiday and when we read the 10 Commandments. And so through God, we set the agenda of our responsibility. Our redemption ultimately won't come from outside of ourselves, but our willingness to engage in mitzvot and in the work to free the enslaved, to feed the hungry, to shelter the homeless, and to take care of all the blessings we have received. And finally, min hametzar karatiyah, from our Mitzrayim, from our limited places, in our distress, we do call to God. And God answers us by giving us freedom. So it's ours to work for. It's ours to pursue as we pursue peace. And it's ours to protect. Chag Sameach.